So let me extend a warm welcome, and that's the operative word today, to all of you, students, guests, staff, and faculty. We're delighted that you have chosen to join us here to celebrate together the good work of our students and faculty this past summer in labs, in lecture rooms, in music studios, and a range of places where learning went on. My name is Rick Pointer. I'm the acting provost here at Westmont, and it's my pleasure to oversee this program and to welcome you today. While our students were hard at work this summer in their research, I found a little bit of time to read a book by Richard Light, a professor at Harvard, entitled Making the Most of College. And in that book, Light offers a number of interesting observations based on interviews he did a number of years ago, mostly in the 1990s, with students at Harvard and some other outstanding schools. One of the most important, I think, findings of Light's research was that a very high percentage of students that he interviewed reported that one of the most, if not the most, rewarding and engaging experience, learning experience of their undergraduate years was doing one-on-one research with a professor. Didn't really matter what discipline that research had been in or the precise nature of the project. What mattered was the experience of having that close mentoring relationship with a senior colleague who could help those students find their own way in the lab or in the library or in the art studio or in the music practice room. That finding has certainly been confirmed by many other studies. We at Westmont have known that to be the case for a long time, though it's always good to have other sources confirm your own conclusions. We've known that this kind of research experience, this kind of one-on-one collaboration and mentoring relationship has been very, very fruitful because students have told us this, and faculty have told us this over and over and over again. And furthermore, alums have told us this as they've looked back on their own Westmont experience, or as we have seen that manifested in the kind of work they've done post-Westmont or in the kind of lives they're living. Those lives have given eloquent testimony to the value of undergraduate research. And so we're here today to celebrate that value and to hear some more testimonies of the value of research in the kind of context we experienced again this summer of 2011. We're also here to honor the very hard work of the students who were engaged in that research. So to that end, I want now to introduce our student researchers and to identify their projects in a very brief way. You can find in the program an abstract for each of those projects, and I hope you'll take the time at some point to read through those. So students, I would ask you, if you're here today, as I read your name, please rise so that we can acknowledge your presence with us and your good work. And we'll, if we could, let's see, can you hold your applause all the way to the end, or do we feel like we have to applaud on each occasion? Oh, you want to applaud for each person. I can tell that you do. So let's just do it this way. As I say a name or names, as they're rising, give them a round of applause, and then there's not so many of them that we can't handle clapping for each of them individually. So we'll begin with Elijah Tilsky. Elijah worked on a project on synthesizing Vitic reagents from cyclic carbonates. Samantha Gardner and Seth Simons. Their project was in physical chemistry involving chlorinated hexanes. Rachel Teranishi. Is Rachel here? Studying abroad. Okay. Well, we'll clap for her anyway. Rachel worked also in physical chemistry using magnetic resonance to determine the molecular shape of particular crystals. Aaron Barnes. Aaron did a project in biochemistry on cholesterol transport. Dana Chang. Oh, she's hiding on us. Her work was similarly on a project in working on cholesterol transport. Kelsey Cannon. Kelsey worked in organic chemistry on synthesizing Vitic reagents from cyclic carbonates. Sara Schossberger. Down here. Sarah's project was on creating a database of violin etudes for teachers and students. Kelsey Wolf. Kelsey's project was on the influence of personality on cognitive impairment among older adults. Some of these students are still up explaining their projects, I think, to interested parties up there. Sarah Humes. Sarah's project is on the relationship between lifestyle and personality and the cognitive ability of older adults. Ashley Greenewalt. Ashley's project was on synthesizing metal salins as photocatalysts for the oxygenation of organic substrates. Garrett Johnson and Jeff Kuwahara. Their project examined methods to purify water through neutralizing wastewater contaminants. Tamara Sparks. Is Tamara here? Tamara worked on a similar project that focused on developing methods to photooxidize or reduce water contaminants to harmless products. Danielle Willard. Danielle's project was to work towards developing appropriate course materials for utilizing the history of the Holocaust as a means of instructing beginning history students in the methods of that discipline. Amanda Burke, Samantha Kleen, and Jose Ramirez. This trio actually worked on two projects in microbiology. One dealt with innate and adaptive immunities, and the other involved gene expression. Daniel G. Daniel's project was a project in philosophy in which he was studying really ultimately human ontology, but looking at the problem or the issue of the relationship between part and whole. Amanda Gravum, Jackson Kwiatkowski, and Bethany Sutherland. This trio also worked on two projects involving LISA, the new neutron detector array that investigates, or that they use to investigate excited states of neutron-rich oxygen isotopes. And last but not least, Andrew Sutherland. Andrew worked on a project on the theological meaning of participation in Christ. Let's now give one last big round of applause to all our student researchers. I'm delighted to say that we have three of those researchers who agreed to share briefly today about their research experience. In each case, what we've asked them to do is not so much describe the nature of their project as to reflect on the value of doing research. And so what I will ask now is that the three faculty who are going to introduce our student speakers will come in order, beginning with Dr. Steve Rogers. And then as Sarah Humes finishes her remarks, then I'll simply ask Dr. Nishimura to come, and as Samantha finishes her remarks, I'll ask Dr. Feature to come. And then following Sara's remarks, I'll return to introduce our alumni speaker for this afternoon. So, Dr. Rogers.
Well, thanks, Rick. Well, it's my pleasure to introduce Sara Humes. I think a couple of good words to describe Sara are curious and inquisitive. And I think it's that curiosity and inquisitiveness that led her to decide to pursue research. She kind of came into it not really knowing fully what to expect. And I think this was an area of psychology that she just simply hadn't developed as much, and she recognized it was probably a weakness for her, and she wanted to offset that. So she wanted to be much more well-rounded. So we spent our summer in a project looking at the neuropsychology of cognitive functioning in older adults, and she was able to put together a really nice abstract, including gathering data with older adults, doing statistical analyses, and then putting together a poster that she'll actually present at the International Neuropsychology Society in Montreal in February. And through this process, I just grew to appreciate even more her exceptional writing skills, just her outstanding work ethic, and then just her interpersonal warmth. So without further ado, Sara.
When one thinks of summer, possible words that come to mind are beach, vacation, sand, possibly watermelon. But research is not usually one of the first words that is equated with summer for most. Although my summer included these fun activities, I took a leap of faith in dedicating a portion of it to assisting Dr. Rogers in his longitudinal study on the cognitive and emotional functioning of the elderly. Beginning college, I had no specific concept of what research was, let alone what major I wanted to take or course of path that I wanted to pursue. I never expected research to be part of my academic repertoire during my college years. This was partly due to my concept of this word involving the prototypical stereotype of one sitting in a lab for hours, isolated from people examining enzymes in a petri dish. No offense to all of you science majors. It just didn't sound interesting to me. To be honest, the word research in itself scared me and frightened me a bit. However, after doing a little research of my own of the opportunities in the psychology department, I decided to step out of my comfort zone and asked to assist Dr. Rogers in the summer research experience. Like many new endeavors, I came into it with hardly any expectations, a willing attitude, and an open mind. I was grateful to at least be part of something larger than myself and something meaningful that I can contribute during my summer. The research experience exceeded my expectations and corrected my false conceptions of research. The process, including testing older adults and interacting with my professor and the other lab assistants, was far from drab and isolating. I was pleased to be proven wrong, and the experience showed me the many forms that research can take, including more of a social and interpersonal aspect to it. And logistically, I appreciated the setup of it and really liked the organization. The atmosphere was of guidance and instruction, so I felt secure in my abilities. However, there was enough flexibility to stimulate my creativity and critical thinking skills that are needed in the research field. I did not feel watched over and hovered, but I felt part of the process included and that my opinions were valued. On a personal level, it bolstered my sense of capability and assurance in my skills. I enjoyed the responsibilities and expectations that were placed on us and did not feel like they were too much to handle. It also encouraged me that I'm closer to being ready for graduation than I thought, and also applying my education to the postgraduate world. And as a senior, this is something that I've been thinking about a lot, and something that I will even think about more so in the future. I also found in retrospect that the research experience strengthened my interpersonal and communication skills, tested my patience at times, and gave me insight into the possible ventures of the psychology realm that I will further explore this year. Ultimately, being part of the research process has been an exciting and insightful experience. It has opened many outlets and opportunities for me that I did not even expect to find. And largely because of participating in this summer research experience, I was offered 2 jobs for the entire year to further aid in the psychology department, assisting Dr. Rogers in the longitudinal study, as well as specific side projects, and also as an assistant to the editor of the International Journal of Psychology of Religion, Ray Palutian, who had a large influence on the psychology department of Westmont. And I also believe that this will reveal further areas of psychology that I would like to pursue. So in the next year and after graduation, I'm not exactly sure what the future holds, but based on this experience, I am assured that new doors will continue to open. Thank you.
It's a real pleasure for me to introduce Samantha Gardner. She actually began working with us from her first year. She was a first-year student when she started working with us. And it's been a real pleasure and delight working with her because in experimental science, a lot of things go wrong, and most of the time we spend fixing things up. And one of the things that makes it a real pleasure for me to work with Samantha is that whenever I ask her to do something, no matter how difficult, she does 3 things. And if you know her, you can kind of see her doing this. The first is that she gives me a big smile, and she gives this big grin, and then she gives me a thumbs up, and then she says, "I can do it." Samantha.
Hello. As previously stated, I'm currently a 3rd-year biology and chemistry student, and I've had the privilege of researching in the chemistry department for the past 2 years with Dr. Nishimura, studying energy interactions between substituted naphthalene molecules and other compounds. One of my favorite aspects of summer research has been the opportunity to collaborate with both student researchers and professors. Through research, I've been blessed with some stellar upperclassmen mentors. Not only do we discuss our different research projects with each other, but we also help each other when one of our machines needs adjusting, or if we just need someone to bounce ideas off of. These mentors have shown me tips on how to get into medical school, things they wish they would have done that they wanted to make sure I would do, and advice on everything from how to study for the MCATs to the best places to rock climb around Santa Barbara. Researching alongside a professor has been an extremely valuable and life-shaping experience, and I have been fortunate to be under the guidance of 2 professors, as Dr. Nishimura partnered with Dr. Ken Martin of Point Loma Nazarene University during the summer. Both Dr. Nishimura and Dr. Martin provided me with guidance and patience while explaining to me concepts that were new or unfamiliar to me, or that I just didn't completely understand. These 2 professors became extremely influential mentors to me, instilling within me a love of finding new things, discovering unexpected trends or phenomena, and always wanting to learn more. I believe I'll take this love of learning and thirst for knowledge with me even beyond graduation, and will continue to challenge myself intellectually during my professional career, just as I have during undergraduate research. Along with many days of successful experiments, we also had problems and even failures when one of our machines wouldn't work correctly. However, even through these problems, good scientific results and even learning opportunities resulted. And consequently, we became well-versed in troubleshooting, learning the machine inside and out by taking it completely apart and putting it back together, and even designing new copper posts using the diamond saw. Such a close personal relationship with professors, I believe, is unique to small colleges like Westmont. It was achieved in part through close personal contact beyond the laboratory. During summer research, I would continuously talk with professors on a one-on-one basis, even discussing science while eating dinner at their houses. It's through these encounters that my professors got to know me as a person as well. They know I'm a little on the shy side. They know my strengths and weaknesses, and knowing each other on a more personal level has greatly contributed to the precise and effective way in which they advise me. During research, we would often have game nights and after dinner at their houses. I got to know their spouses, their children, and can even boast of a few new friendships with their dogs. I always look forward to weekly Friday lunches at Padaro Beach Grill or The Habit. Research has made me feel like part of a scientific family, and I deeply value my professors' advice and opinions on my future because they truly want to see me succeed. Researching at Westmont has definitely improved one skill, and that's my confidence and ability to present my research during poster presentations and symposiums. I can still remember my very first symposium, Westmont's Celebration of Spring Research 2010, where I was extremely nervous that one of my professors would come up and ask me questions that were way over my head. I'm happy to report that not only did I survive that symposium, but I began to actually enjoy presenting my research and sharing it with family, friends, and fellow students. I even became excited sharing with them the different molecules we were studying. Admittedly, sometimes my enthusiasm is met by it looks like I'm some sort of mad scientist or crazy science nerd, but that's okay. Additionally, attending the WSA conference held in Monterey in January, where grad students and professional researchers shared their research, gave me a glimpse into what life as a professional researcher would look like, and also showed me some new advances in the field that were being made by researchers who were extremely bright and explained to me concepts that were a little out of my area of expertise in the field of chemistry. But they were more than happy to share with me their experiences as I shared with them my posters. Also, researching with Dr. Nishimura has resulted in a number of publications to add to my resume. After receiving a copy of the first publication I was a part of, I remember glancing at the fruits of our labor and looking at my name on the article that Dr. Nishimura had spent so much time and energy on, and that was the results of multiple studies and experiments. Researching has honed my ability to interact with other scientists, expanded my knowledge, and provided me with skills necessary not only to get into medical school, but also for success beyond earning my undergraduate and professional degrees. I am so blessed and fortunate to have this educational opportunity, and thank you for letting me share my experiences with you. Thank you.
I've known Sara Schossberger for, I don't know, about 5 years now. And she started with me as a violinist and still is taking lessons. So it was a natural progression that we would take on this project having to do with violin studies. Sara was a wonderful person to work with, a good fit in that she has a sharp mind and is energetic and inquisitive and a really hard worker. And if any evidence of that was needed, she was diagnosed with strep yesterday and isn't contagious anymore, which is why I'm sitting next to her. But just to show you that how much she cares about a project she invests in. And so it's my pleasure to introduce Sara Schossberger.
Good afternoon. As Dr. Fisher said, I'm Sara Schossberger, and this summer we worked on putting together an etude database for violin teachers. I must admit that I never expected to do research with a faculty member as an undergraduate music major. As far as I knew, collaborative research was something that you did as a graduate student to help pay for grad school. Even if one were to do research as an undergraduate, it would likely be pretty much anyone in any major except the performing arts. My reasoning for this was that in any course of study, one aims to perfect their craft, which is different for each discipline. For example, science majors learn how to run and analyze experiments. History majors learn how to research and reflect on historical events. And psychology majors learn how to observe and interpret human behavior. But music majors, we practice and learn how to perform. This is not to say that music majors do not do research, but it's not the starting place as it is in other courses of study. And there's also often a gulf between the level and capacity of student and faculty performers that can make it difficult to collaborate. The funny thing is that when Dr. Fisher brought this idea to me in the spring, and asked me if I'd be interested in doing summer research, I didn't think twice about it. Well, maybe in terms of the time commitment, but as an aspiring violin teacher, the project itself intrigued me, as I knew that it would be a beneficial process to go through and that the final product would be both beneficial for myself and other teachers. At least that's what I hoped would be the case. And based on our work so far and our future plans, I believe that it will be an important contribution to the violin pedagogy world. While we worked this summer, I also participated in several Suzuki teacher training courses. And during that time, I would often have my etude books out or our draft of our database up on my computer screen, and several of the other trainees would ask me about my work. I explained to them our goal of creating an online database where violin teachers could search for etudes by composer, level, technique, and have a short individual description of each or a general description of different books. And they all responded very positively. For many of them, including myself, I think that it took us a moment to realize that we didn't have such a resource in the violin world, and we were all a bit surprised that we didn't, and we figured we should. I guess part of me was hopeful that based on this discovery, maybe others would be willing to offer their skills in helping us work on it, or maybe give us some ideas on what etudes to use. Instead, most responses were something along the lines of, wow, that'd be a great resource. I would never have the patience to do all that and enter all that information. Good luck with your work. These comments did not deter me. Rather, they encouraged me to put even more effort into this project. If we could all make use of such a resource, and yet there was none available, why shouldn't I work on it? And it might as well be me and Dr. Fishor if no one else. At times, I think that I still might not be the most qualified individual, as I barely scratched the surface in terms of playing etudes myself. But the more I talk to other teachers, the more I realize that none of us know the complete repertoire. And there's certain etudes that I use that people have never heard of, and other ones that they claim are the most important that I've never used. And there are certainly some that almost every violin teacher will say is important, but the fact that there are so many options indicates that there's a variety of approaches to violin playing, and one is not necessarily better than another. What saddens me is when teachers settle for one way and don't take the time to explore what other options might be available in order to best help their students. This is why the work on this project is so important to me and why I'm determined to see it through and do it thoroughly so that teachers will have the opportunity to help their students. This summer, we worked our way through 9 etude books, but we still have a long way to go, including making an actual functioning website. It may be a while before this resource is officially available to the violin community and can be effectively used by teachers, including myself. But even so, I know that I have already benefited from the work that we have done. In terms of teaching, working on this project has allowed me to compare different etudes, get other teachers' perspectives on them, and consider why might one use one etude over another when helping a student. In terms of analysis and creating a database, it has helped me learn the appropriate terms and categories to use when describing music. I know it is still difficult to describe rhythmic patterns in prose to even violin teachers who should know what I'm talking about. And on a more nostalgic note, this project has brought back memories for me when I first played these etudes as a student. And I do not remember being overjoyed at playing them, because they can often get very tedious and boring. But now looking back as a teacher, I realize how important they are to violin studies or any instrumental study. And I'm very thankful my teachers did make me play them. And now I know how to use them, and I can be a better, more effective teacher because of the knowledge I have both through my experience and through the research process. As we move forward in our work of creating this etude database, I look forward to see how it will continue to impact both myself and other teachers and the students who are able to utilize this resource in the future. Thank you.
Well, thank you to our student speakers. It's now my great pleasure to introduce our featured alumni speaker this afternoon, Dr. Brian Novi. Brian graduated from Westmont in 2002 as a biology major and went on from here to earn his DDS degree from Loma Linda University. Along the way of his education, he tells me that he worked as a bank teller, a lifeguard, a waiter at IHOP, and even as the guy inside the Bugs Bunny costume at Six Flags Magic Mountain. Whatever it takes, I guess, to get an education. Because, or perhaps in spite of that background, Brian is now an assistant professor of restorative dentistry at Loma Linda, where he teaches a variety of courses, including caries management, evidence-based dentistry, dental materials, and operative dentistry. He also maintains a private practice and acts as a clinical director for 2 nonprofit dental clinics in Southern California. Somehow he's managed to find the time to continue in research as well. His research interests focus on understanding the predictive quality of saliva in relation to microbial growth patterns and ultimately tooth decay. He was telling me earlier that this research on tooth decay is actually a pretty narrow field, so much so that he's being invited to give talks around the world. He leaves very shortly for Argentina. Brian serves on a number of professional boards and has recently received several prestigious honors. One of them was an invitation to speak at the World Health Organization's Global Conference on Health in Geneva, and he was recently presented with the Dugoni Award from the California Dental Association Foundation for outstanding contributions to dental education. 2 years ago, the American Dental Association named him and his office as the ADA Adult Preventive Care Practice of the Year. So for those interested, he'll be scheduling dental appointments following his lecture. Now, probably has other things to do. But it is our very great pleasure and privilege to welcome you back, Brian. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Novi.
Thank you very much. I'm used to giving an 8-hour lecture on tooth decay. And so to wrap this up in 10 minutes is going to be a little difficult. And I'm not used to standing behind a podium. I feel sort of like a caged panther right now. I apologize if I decide to move, but I'll move like this. Wow, it's great to be back here, and thank you so much for the invitation, Dr. Pointer. It feels weird to call people by their first name when I come back. A lot of people ask, well, so what about tooth decay? That's ridiculous. I can't believe you can make a career with making dentists understand tooth decay better. But believe it or not, in the dental education world in our country, it's not actually mandatory that a dental student learns anything about the science of tooth decay in order to graduate with a DDS degree until just recently, last year, we finally got that mandated by the American Dental Education Association. I kind of describe myself like this. I'm the dentist on all the commercials that you don't see. You hear that saying, 9 out of 10 dentists? You have to ask yourself, what about that 10th dentist? Why didn't he agree? What's wrong with him? I'm that dentist. I'm the 10th dentist who doesn't agree with the other dentists out there. I've recently joined the Academy, or the American Dental Association, as the cariologist to the ADA Council on Scientific Affairs, which means that when you pick up a tube of toothpaste and you see that ADA accepted seal on there, it's because I sat in a room with a lot of lawyers and 15 other dentists, and we had a very, very frank, open discussion about whether or not that toothpaste should carry the seal of the American Dental Association. And I've made a lot of enemies because I found that in that world, ethics are really lacking out there in the business world. And here at Westmont, ethics are kind of instilled in you, and you take it for granted. When you get out into the real world outside the Westmont bubble, this world is motivated by a lot of money, and especially in healthcare, there's a lot of money out there, and there are a lot of companies that don't want anyone to interrupt their profit. So, back when I was a student at Westmont doing research, I found a little tiny bacteria growing on the shores of the duck pond. And went through Bergey's Manual of Determinative Bacteriology and found out that no one had ever seen this bacteria before. It was of the genus Xanthobacter. But wow, this thing was a really cool little organism. And preparing for this talk, I went back through my lab notebook, and it was very nice to go back and meet Mr. Xanthobacter again. We were trying to sequence his 16S ribosomal RNA when I was a senior, and hopefully I had these aspirations of publishing this paper and naming this bacteria until I screwed up the whole thing and wound up killing the poor little guy, and now no one knows who that little bacteria was. But it doesn't matter anymore, I guess, although it still affects my life today. And I find it interesting that now I get paid by these dental manufacturers to help them come up with ways to find oral bacteria. And the cool thing about dentistry is that it's rapidly evolving, and the idea that you go into a dental office and we say, well, you have a cavity, you need to get it filled, is completely different from what I go out and I teach dentists to do. I actually teach them that there are ways that you can actually analyze your patient's saliva and tell them that in the next 2 years you have this probability of developing a cavity. And if we do this, you're not going to get that cavity. So if you let me do what I want to do and you listen to what I say, I will guarantee that you won't have any cavities. And I make all my patients that promise that if they get a cavity while I'm their dentist, I'll fill it for free, number one. But number two, you need to fire me because it means that I don't know what the heck I'm doing. So anyway, reflecting all of that, I have to wonder, so looking back at Westmont 10 years ago and my research experience, what would I love to know now or love to know then that I now know? Number one, keep a lab notebook. And that elicits a little chuckle from the science majors who have it drilled in them that it's not a lab notebook, it's a way of life. I actually sit in my backyard when I want to relax with my lab notebook. And I actually observe the birds eating off my bird feeders in my backyard, and I'm sure Beth Horvath would be very thrilled to learn that I finally respect birds. I never liked them when I was a student, but especially marine biology. But too many species to memorize. Anyway, so keep a lab notebook, number one. Number two, read. I was told that often at Westmont. You have to read, you have to read, you have to read, you have to read. Learn to love to read. And I was like, I can't wait to get out of Westmont when I don't have to read. So if the students are in the room, I would encourage you, pick up one scientific paper a day and read it. Find any article that interests you and read it. Because it will add to your wealth of knowledge like you've never before imagined. And everything that you're doing today at Westmont is going to impact your life later on. You may not realize it yet, but there are little glimmers of stuff that are happening to you. You don't quite see the forest for the trees yet. And looking back, you'll go, I am so glad I spent time sequencing DNA, because now I understand what these people are talking about, and I can have these conversations with people. I never thought that I would wind up helping companies design monoclonal antibody tests. I didn't even understand when I was at Westmont. So keep a lab notebook, read. My next advice would be to write. Write as much as you can. And here at Westmont, back when I was a student, I remember the essays just kept coming in. It's like, write this essay, write this essay, write this essay. The more you write, the more you'll be recognized as you go out into the world as professionals. Even writing just a little bit and having someone find that little bit and publish it. I've had more things published because other people have liked what I said and just quoted me, which has elicited more papers from me, which has been great. It's wonderful when the editor of a journal calls you and says, will you please write this, rather than you sending a paper to them saying, will you please publish this? It's a lot easier that way. And my last piece of advice would be to learn to not adsorb information when you're here. Learn to absorb it. And if you don't know the difference between absorption versus adsorption, I will liken it to a fluoride ion on a tooth. We all think that fluoride, when you put fluoride in your mouth, it's absorbed into the tooth. And if this podium was a tooth and I was a little fluoride ion, this is absorption. But fluoride doesn't get absorbed into the tooth. What happens, and you can tell I was a student of Dr. Percival, right, with all my animations. Fluoride is actually adsorbed onto the tooth and just sticks to the outside, and there's a precipitation reaction that occurs with calcium and phosphate in the saliva that then results in this little spattering of crystalline structure on the tooth, which is more acid resistant to the acids that cause tooth decay. And I think that when I was a student, I spent a lot of time adsorbing, just sitting next to a professor and hoping that I could figure out what the heck they were talking about, and I'd get this glazed look over my eyes and go, and they would say, I can tell by the look on your face that you don't quite understand. So when did I lose you? So focus on absorbing as much as you possibly can gain from them, because the one thing I have learned now that I've been in academia for a little while is, and talking to admissions committees and writing letters of recommendation for applicants, the Westmont name carries so much weight in higher education that you as students don't yet realize. At Loma Linda, if a student applies and they're from Westmont, that is a huge check mark in the yes column. There is so much respect out there for what goes on in this university, this college. This is an amazing place where you can gather so much information that will really just launch your career into the stratosphere. So absorb, don't adsorb. And I think I'll leave you with one little last tidbit of information, that is keep a lab notebook. When you want to apply for a patent, your lawyer will want to see your lab notebook, and it can be a huge source of information for you that's going to protect you a lot more than if you didn't have a lab notebook. And you can keep it for all aspects of your life. It becomes just this journal that you carry around. When you get stressed out, you can scribble out everything that's in your mind. And believe me, you will have a ton of stuff in your mind that just needs to get out there into a lab notebook somewhere. So Dr. Frank Percival always used to end his lectures in microbiology class by saying, "Peace be with you." And to you students out there, you have a whole year ahead of you. And I'll just say, peace be with you.
Well, thank you so much. I think that bit about the glazed over look was actually a reference to how Brian looked in my history class. But of course, he did excellent work in there, and so I'm not sure there were too many moments in any class where he had a glazed look. Well, thanks everybody for coming. There are probably still refreshments upstairs, so help yourselves, and do enjoy going back to any of the posters you didn't get a chance to look at before. And again, to the students, we just say congratulations on excellent work, and for those who aren't graduating this next May, we look forward perhaps to another summer with you. So thanks, and peace be with you.